Is I want to look at an issue that I think is very important. To me, it's extremely important, and that is the deconstructing of the memorials and the statutes and the history of the Confederate South. The taking down of the statutes, and now the banning of the Dixie flag at the NASCAR race that happened this past week, and the removal of all the Confederate icons and statues and everything else that's associated when America went through strife with herself, and the Union forces were able to overcome the Confederate forces, and the Confederates no longer have their opportunities, and so they're removing the Confederate flags and the statues, and I'm here to go on record today to say I'm totally 100% stomped down against that move. I think the Confederate flag ought to remain flying. They took it down several years ago. Nikki Haley got involved in the process down in Columbia, South Carolina. I preached in Gettysburg in our second meeting at Gettysburg with a couple of soldiers that were dressed in gray Confederate outfits that were actually original, authentic Confederate outfits, and their Confederate flag, and I posed with them there at Gettysburg when we had our 4th of July celebration going back a few years ago. I'm against the removal of the Confederate flag. I'm against the taking down of the statutes. Now, I am not for racism. I am not for racial hatred. I'm not for white supremacy. I'm not for white separatists. I'm not for segregation. I am not for any of those things that perhaps one may say that the Confederate flag represents. I am not for any of those things. I am not. What I am for is history. You cannot rewrite it. And I think that this notion that by destroying all symbols of the Confederacy, that it was just as much a part of American history as, Christopher Columbus and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I think that it's just as much a part of the American history as many of the Indian tribal names that are right here in the state of New York. Many of the cities and towns and rivers are named after the indigenous people that were defeated by the invaders, if you will, years ago. And we haven't changed the names of the Sequoias or the name of some of the literally thousands of names of the Indian indigenous people that they went to war. The Japheth brothers, the Puritans, the Pilgrims went to war with over a series of years and defeated the Indians and drove them onto reservations. But the names of the rivers and towns, many of the towns upstate New York probably has more Indian names than you can shake a stick at. The lakes and the rivers are all from the Indian culture of the indigenous people. I don't hear anybody saying remove that. I think it's petty. I think it is filled with more racial hatred than the Dixie flag itself. I think the people who are advocating for the removal of the Dixie flag are filled with more racial hatred than you can shake a stick at, because we've been living fairly peacefully with those flags flying in certain venues. I'm wholeheartedly against it. I'm against the removal of the statues. And Robert E. Lee is a favorite person of mine. You say, well, Pastor Manning, how can you say that? Aren't you a black person? Aren't you? These are generals that fought to keep you enslaved. Well, they lost. They lost. So, they didn't win. So, well, it's not a matter that they lost. Their intent was to keep you enslaved. Well, it didn't happen. A whole lot of people have had intents against me or against others. They lost. And that's all water under the bridge right now. Well, then they shouldn't be honored. Why not? Why not? It doesn't hurt anybody. I think that it ought to make everybody stronger. That's what I think. I think that by completely removing the so-called opposition forces that believed in slavery and states' rights, ought to make people who at least one feel more of an accomplishment, and those of us ought to feel that, all right, so this is a part of our history, our heritage, and we cannot undo it. And so I'm just against it. I support that a movement to restore this, and I think that people need to be, I think this is basically an idea that is fueled by some of probably the biggest racial hatred people that you're going to find. And a lot of these Japheth people probably have greater suspicions and racial, if you will, separation ideas and condescending ideas against black people than did the Confederates did. I can tell you, there are some people that sit in Wall Street, or there are some people in Hollywood, or there's some people in the entertainment industry that their racial suspicions and activities are worse than the plantation owner. You just got to get to know them, For instance, let's say, for instance, you're looking at the number of young men that are being killed by police and allegedly police brutality. And I say allegedly police brutality, and I mean that. Can I share something with you? You would think that the only place that you would have racial hatred that would emanate into or end up in the shooting or hanging or the lynching or mistreating or brutality against a black man, it would only happen in the southern states where they want to take down the Dixie flag and the statues of Robert E. Lee and change the name of the forts, right? You would think, well, that's where it's at, so let's go down there. Can I share something with you? And I promise not to inflict myself upon you any further. Can I share something with you that right here in the state of New York, come on, let's take it home. Let's put it out where you can get it. Right here in the city of New York, there has been per capita more alleged police brutality and killings of black men in New York than there have been in Mississippi or in Georgia or Louisiana or South Carolina. There have been more racially charged alleged police brutality. Let me name one. We'll go Eric Garner most recently, right? Remember him? We'll go back to several years ago to a place called Brooklyn, New York precinct, and let's talk about a fellow by the name of Abner Louima. Arrested by some white boys, white cops, right? Took him in the bathroom and took a plunger that you use with a wooden handle on it, that you use to make the toilet go down when sometimes it gets stopped up. They stuck that plunger up his rectum time and time and time again. These are two freaky cops. They were freaky cops in the precinct. Tore that man's total intestine, had to have a new set of intestines. Abner Louima, right here in Brooklyn, New York. That's what they did to him. So we got Eric Garner. A few years after that, we had a fellow by the name of Amadou Diallo. Amadou Diallo, right? His mother cried, Amadou, up in the Bronx, on the west side of the Bronx, going into his apartment at one night, and there was a group of police officers that were just recently disbanded. Sabbath sent me a report about some 600 police officers that patrol the streets at night in plain clothes, plain cars, no badge, don't show nothing. They'll jump out of a car, whoop your head in New York City and get back. Don't make no arrest reports, don't report to the desk sergeant. They do whatever and their motto of Sabbath, of this group that you sent me, their motto is, we own the night. Several of these police officers accosted Amadou Diallo going into his apartment up in the Bronx one night, and they all jumped out the car thinking he was somebody else and told him to halt, and he had a cell phone. They said he reached for it. I don't believe it. They opened up fire. They hit that boy 41 times into Amadou Diallo. We're talking about New York. We ain't talking about Mississippi. We ain't talking about Tennessee. We ain't talking about Louisiana, Georgia. We talking about right here in New York. We're talking about, so if you're going to talk about that, and then of course we had Sean Bell, remember him, the nightclub out there in Queens? Popo rolled up out there and sprayed him full of bullets, Sean Bell. Then you got Michael Griffin. This goes back even 30 years ago. Michael Griffin, 35 years ago, out in Howard Beach, right? Crossing a bunch of young white boys in Howard Beach. We were out there in Canarsie the other day, near Howard Beach. Caught this young black boy out there, Michael Griffin, and with baseball bats and axes ran him out into the traffic on the Belt Parkway, and he killed himself. This is in New York. This ain't in Mississippi. This is in New York City. This ain't even in Washington D.C. This is New York City. Well, Michael Griffin. And then, of course, we had Sean Bell. Then you got Eric Garner, and there are others that have been killed right here in New York City. So now check this out. That if the South is the place where allegedly racism happens, why is it that you got more deaths of black men in New York City per capita than you have any other place on planet Earth? By police brutality, right? So it isn't the South. It isn't the Confederate flag. You would think with the Confederate flag or the statues of Robert E. Lee were held, that would be the place where the sentiments against blacks would be most egregious, and that's where but no, it's here in liberal New York, LGBTQ, New York City, NAACP Shopton, New York City is where you got more deaths of black men than any other place on the planet in terms of police brutality. Go figure, right? So something in this wash ain't clean. Somebody this ain't right. So certainly being in the North does not save you from police brutality, or racism. The absence of a Confederate flag not flying anywhere in New York does not save you from racism or from death. No, it does not. No, so it ain't flag. It's the people. And it ain't the Southern people. It's the Northern people, the ones you got to watch. It's the one that smile in your face and stab you in your back. Those are in the North that you got to watch. So I'm against this rule. I think it's wrong. I'm against it. I have nothing against the Confederate flag. Let them fly. Robert E. Lee is a hero of mine. So listen. I even looked at some of the things of Genghis Khan from time to time. I don't know if I call him a hero. I can be open-minded about stuff. But can I say one other thing to you, and I promise not to inflict myself upon you any further, truly. So, the Emperor of Japan in 1941, right? In the midst of the war going on in the European theater with Hitler and his Nazi regime, decided now was the time to attack America. Roosevelt was acting all weak. His wife was running around there, Eleanor was running around there, running her mouth. Roosevelt sitting in a chair. They all sleeping in different bedrooms, different part of the house. So the Japanese emperor said, now's the time to whack America. Because Japanese are some feisty little people, I can tell you that right now. So they put together an armada of ships and airplanes and left Tokyo and headed towards Hawaii on that infamous Sunday morning. And everybody knows after that, everything else has been history. The Japs attacked America, sank the beautiful Arizona, killed hundreds, if not thousands of people in that event, and that's when World War II got started for America. We were attacked by the Japanese. And of course, in Midway, if you know anything about the confrontations in the Western theater with the Japanese war with Japanese in Midway, Iwo Jima, some of the other great battlefields itself fighting the Japanese, a lot of soldiers lost their lives and died painfully by Japanese. They had bamboo sticks. My father came home from the war with a disease that had been spread by the Japanese in New Guinea as they tried to take the Western Front. And Japanese had these bombs called the bouncing Betties. You would step on a grenade, it wouldn't just go off. And probably at the time, it would only just kill you if you stepped on it. The Japanese had a thing called the bouncing Betty. You step on it, the hand grenade would jump up in the air about 4.5 feet and then explode and kill everybody within the parameter of it. My father went through that and came home shell-shocked from fighting the Japanese, right? The Japanese. And finally, Truman dropped a big bomb on them with that Enola Gay plane. Y'all remember that? And General Doolittle and all that kind of stuff, right? But guess what? Guess what? Y'all fly the Japanese flag down there at the United Nations. That's right. And people can go down to America in the store in America and buy the Japanese flag. Heck, I bought a Lexus automobile the other day. Y'all buying them Sonys, you're buying them Panasonics, you're buying all that Japanese phone, all that Japanese. I ain't heard nobody say we ought not be buying no Japanese materials. I ain't heard nobody say get rid of all these Japanese Toyotas. I ain't heard, and by the way, General Toyota, the Captain Admiral Toyota. Admiral Toyota was the admiral, one of the greatest naval sailing vessels in the history of the world. Admiral Toyota. And y'all buying them Toyotas, proud to run around. I tell y'all, that Toyota's a good, the Sienna, and that good. But I ain't hear nobody say don't buy no Toyotas or Lexus or Panasonic or Sony. No. But the Japanese killed Americans too. Brought my father home sick. I ain't heard nobody say take down the Japanese. Now y'all a bunch of damn hypocrites. This is all they do. You're just a bunch of hypocrites. This is all there is to it. No, no. I'm against it. And I think people need to wake up. And the Japanese lost. And now y'all can't wait to go over there and eat some sushi. Look at you. Talking about sushi. You don't even know what sushi is. Talking about I want some sushi. So I think it's important. But because Japanese, all right, let's stop there. Santa Anna whacked the living daylights out of the Alamo down there in Texas, right? Santa Anna marched up with them red uniforms out of Mexico City, down there in Mexico, marched up against Jim Bowie, Sam Houston, and all that crowd, Davy Crockett, all that crowd down there in the Alamo in Texas, sieged that bad boy and killed all of them. Killed all of them. And y'all still letting the Mexicans come in. And I ain't seen y'all take down the images of Santa Anna or the Mexican flag, right? And guess what? Check this out. And this one will kill you. This one will absolutely stomp down, choke you. So when I worked for Ford Motor Company, they said that Henry Ford was a racist, that he hated the Jews. Okay, all right. I don't know if he did or not. But the Germans, they didn't necessarily attack America but America got involved in the German Nazi war, right? So it was the same thing. And a lot of, hundreds of thousands of Americans, if you go over to Normandy, you ever been to Normandy in Paris, in France? Look at all them soldiers on D-Day, on Omaha Beach, on Utah Beach, all them American soldiers that lost their lives, tens of thousands of them in Normandy and Utah Beach on D-Day, right? German soldiers whacked the living daylights out of young white boys and black boys in the D-Day invasion, right? But guess what? When I was working for Ford Motor Company, and there was a Jamaica Lincoln dealership and I asked the owner of the dealership. I said, you have he had also a Volkswagen dealership. I said, Volkswagen is a German car. It means Volkswagen means the car of the people. It's a German automobile, very popular going back years ago, still popular, the Volkswagen. How can you, as a Jew, buy a German product? Because it was the Jews it was the Germans that tried to kill the Jews. Listen, we don't forget that Jewish owner And the Ford Motor Company said, we forgot about that. We sell it. These Volkswagens are selling, and we're going to sell some of them. And check this out. The Germans make that Mercedes-Benz. The Germans make that BMW. Oh, yes, they do. No, yes, they do. And I see Jew and Gentile alike buying them Mercedes-Benz, BMW. I don't see y'all holding against the Germans. When millions of people lost their lives because of the Japanese and the Germans, and yet Americans are still, everything is everything. So you're a bunch of damn hypocrites. You're a bunch of hypocrites. And somebody ought to tell you. Somebody ought to tell you about yourselves. So no, I'm not for the, well, I got one more. Can I do just one more? And I promise. B.B. King says he's playing, that's why I sing the blues, and he went around on the guitar, and he came back, and he said, can I do one more? I said, can I do one more? You know, America got established, first of all, as a colony of the United Kingdom, Great Britain. And more specifically, there have been several kings that have lived, but at the time that America decided to rebel against England was King George was on the throne, right, many moons ago. But the American people said, we've had enough of this colonization business. We're tired of taxation without representation. We're here in America now. Why we still got to support the English cause, pay them taxes, and be subject to the king and have the laws of England rolling over us here in America? So they decided to have a revolutionary war. Yes, that's right. Revolutionary war. Bunker Hill, right? Want to have a revolutionary war. And so they declared war. No taxation without representation. And off they went. And King George sent his armada of ships and redcoats. That's right. Marched into America. Eventually with the help of the French, and Ben Franklin's and the great negotiating skills, America won the war and won its independence from the French. I mean, from England. But you know, the Americans still call them England the mother country. What the hell? Didn't y'all fight? Didn't the English kill slaves and free men alike here in America? Didn't George Washington handle it? I mean, and now you're talking about America still your greatest, England is still your greatest ally. You know, Mother England. Hell, everywhere I look, they got streets and names and towns and rivers after them people over there in England somewhere. All these, you know, St. Lawrence and all these Amsterdams and all this stuff, all these names that belong over yonder in England, here in America, right? Syracuse. No! You're a bunch of phonies. You just want to pick on the Southern boys, is that right? Why? What's up with that? Why? What did they do to you? Because you fought war with the Japanese, you fought a war with the Germans, you fought a war with England, and yet everything is hunky-dory with them. But with the Southern boys, with the Confederate boys, what's wrong with it? Say what about slavery? You don't kill it and taste it. Don't you try that. Don't tell me it was about slavery. And that's the other thing I think that is insulting. They always raise the issue that it was about slavery, and all black folk ought to be insulted about that. Black folk ought to be the one. So we're there defending black folk. Hell, don't defend me. Don't defend black folk. They say we're defending the black man against how awful slavery. Talking about Fort Bragg, right? My daddy worked at Fort Bragg. My mama did too. How awful it is for young troops to have to go to a fort that's been named after Braxton Bragg, who was a Confederate general. Now, they're not saying they're supporting. Notice that the arguments that they're making about removal of these confederacies and all of this is not about uniting America. It's not about racial harmony. It's about we're trying to defend the black man. It's somehow that we're into the little children, and all you white folk got to come run to help black folk all the time. What the hell? What? It's an insult. It's an insult. You know, I lived around Fort Bragg. That's right. And several of my uncles served at Fort Bragg. But you know what? The other thing I think is very important that we have to watch out for, and this is where this thing is getting all this juice from. So you can't fly the Confederate flag, right? Old Dixie. But you know, I can tell you this, my friend. Now, I'm against Donald Trump. Everybody knows that. I mean, he lied to me. Plus, he lies all the time. I'm against Donald Trump. I am. No, I'm against him. No, I'm against him. But I'm going to tell you something. I'll tell y'all right now. If Joe Biden, my time, Biden become president, they're going to be flying a LGBTQ flag on the White House. I can tell you that right now. I guarantee, I bet my seat in heaven on the fact that they will be flying that LGBT flag on the White House. That Joe Biden boy, first of all, he's senile. And the man, I don't know if he remembers his name, his address. Joe Biden looks, he's so confused, he looks like he doesn't even know where his bathrooms are in his own house. What an embarrassment to the Democrat Party. But this LGBTQ crowd is now hooked up with Black Lives Matter. And the reason being is because Black Lives Matter, well, the founders of Black Lives Matter are all trannies, transvestites. I mean, they've had a surgical procedure to go sexually a different way than God intended or God commanded. Trannies is what they're called. And they've hooked up now with the Black Lives Matter. And they've hooked up with the LGBT crowd, have hooked up with the, and this matter is it's gonna make you so sick that you're gonna be standing up and praying, come Jesus, come. Republicans, Democrats alike will be, Jesus, maybe Democrats, because these people, Democrats are a bunch of the freakiest people I've ever seen in my life. Republicans are freaky too, but they keep it in the closet. Which very well may be where it should stay. But both of these, Black Lives Matter and the LGBT, are born in an abomination. They're both an abomination. But when they say abomination, that means it's above a sin. A sin is a sin, you can deal with that. You know, the Catholics have a cardinal and a venal sin, but when the Bible says an abomination, that means it's worse than a sin. And you don't get a chance to repent for it. And so I think that it's important that we recognize that our nation, while shedding the Confederacy, is now embracing the LGBT and Black Lives Matter flag. Let me tell you something. I was offended when that Muriel Bowser, who is now the mayor of Washington, D.C., when she painted on the streets of Washington, D.C., Black Lives Matter, without consent of the city council, without consent of people in authority. She just, as a black woman, and probably a freaky one too, said paint Black Lives. It's wrong. It's just a violent organization. Why don't you paint on another street the Black Panthers or the Black Nation of Islam? Why not that? No, it was wrong. But they're getting away with it. Except me. I'm lifting up my voice against it. I'm James David Manning, everybody. I'm the Lord's servant. This is a bit of a news blog we do, looking at spiritual wickedness in high places for the most part, making some observations about it and giving people a biblical foundation to the way of interpreting, rather than have Sean Hannity or Laura Ingraham or Janine Pirro or Anderson Cooper or Rachel Maddow or Don Lemon, Rush Limbaugh interpret what's going on in the world. You come to me and I'll tell you based on what the Word of God says. They'll just give you their worldly, sinful view. But the Manning Report will tell you what God has said, whether to say yea or nay, whether to go or to stay. You'll be led by the word of Almighty God. Come to the Manning Report on a daily basis to interpret the spiritual wickedness in high places, because there's plenty of it that's going on. And so I am he. I'm the Lord's servant, James David Righteous Rebel Manning. And I'm here to serve you with news and information.